Right now on Tech Radio, Tim's Top 10.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. You're welcome to episode 1113 with really just one really big story this week, and that is a new boss announced at Apple. We'll be looking at who he is, what changes to expect, and the highlights of Tim Cook's tenure at CEO as we count down Tim's Top 10. Let's get to it.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always is our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. New CEO announced at Apple. Not really a surprise, though, is it?
Well, I mean, a surprise in that, I wasn't really terribly au fait with him. What's interesting is that we went from a product guy in Steve Jobs to a business guy in Tim Cook, and now we're going back to a product guy. So the question is going to be, or rather the assumption is going to be, we're going to be wowed. When we get, John Ternus version of Apple, we're going to see new stuff, and it's all going to be amazing. I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation. He is being given the keys to the kingdom. It's like, okay, what have you got? And it won't be until we see the first new Apple toy that we'll get a sense of whether this guy is going to be a visionary in the Jobs mold, or a steady hand at the tiller in the Tim Cook mold. And I think you don't get to be CEO of Apple for 15 years without being steady.
I think, is it possible that Tim Cook was CEO of Apple for a longer continuous period than Steve Jobs ever was?
Well, I mean,
I don't know that for a fact. I don't know. Maybe
no, we don't. We're
it's
speculating wildly, but I mean, it's it can be fair to say, there are double acts that, a good manager will be able to spot their own deficiencies and just sort of lean into, somebody else to actually make certain decisions, even if he can put his own stamp on them.
Interesting you say that, because I think that may have happened with Tim Cook and with Steve, because Steve was the visionary and, a bit crazy and out there and always thinking about the product and the customer and stuff like that. And then Tim Cook was more kind of about operations. And now, as you say, Tim is now an operations guy, but he's seeing something in John Ternus, who is more of a hardware guy. So maybe, kind of it's that. You say a double act, but you're handing off from one type of person to another. We'll see. But I think we'll see, as you say, changes in hardware with this new CEO, because John has been with the company a long time. He's there 25 years. He's been the lead on various hardware projects, iPad, AirPods. But the big one was Apple Silicon, which he was all over. So I think an expectation to focus more on hardware, because Tim was more operations. I think that John Ternus will be a product guy. I think we will definitely see some good stuff. But I think your aspiration of wow, as soon as he takes over on the 1st of September might be a little bit too much.
Well, okay, here's the thing, right? We remember very fondly the announcement of the iPhone, right? Shares in Apple did very well off the back of that. However, the announcement of the first iPad, the shares actually took a hit. So, markets don't like things that are disruptive, and Apple, has settled into a pattern of being competent without being disruptive. And I think we are in need of being shaken up a little bit. And if there's somebody to do it, I think it should be somebody that appreciates the heritage and the structures of the company, while also appreciating that sort of legacy in product. So on one level, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what the next big thing is, and we'll know that it's the next big thing if the share price takes a hit.
What do you think the next big thing could be? I mean, is there something missing in our modern world that Apple can come in and...
This is the Apple magic, that they take something that we take for granted and whose flaws are kind of invisible to us now, and just kind of repurpose things ever so slightly and do it their way, at which point you're like, oh, that's really good. I'll give you one example. The MacBook Air, first generation MacBook Air, this was released at the same time that netbooks were absolutely massive, right? The idea that you could spend €300 and get a halfway reasonable laptop was it was very exciting. And yet here comes Apple with an 11-inch laptop that you could fit into an A4 envelope. Wow, amazing. But at the time, a lot of people went, my netbook can do that. My netbook is smaller, etc., etc. Which product actually ended up outlasting?
Well, the MacBook Air,
it was the MacBook Air. And now the current version of the MacBook Air is what? On a model basis, it's like the world's most popular laptop. You know? So you can take a small and light laptop and you can absolutely demolish the market space just underneath you, just by doing it the Apple way. I'll give you another example.
Go on. I'll give you another example then after that. Go.
Okay. AirPods. Apple already owned Beats. Beats that, you know, it's a boutique audio brand. They haven't killed the brand for a reason, because people still know it. It's a brand that you know does take a bashing. That a lot of audio purists say, look, if they're very bass heavy, they're, you know, if you're looking for a particular type of experience, okay, you'll get it, but they're overpriced, et cetera, et cetera. And then Apple came along with wireless earbuds, and now they are, you know, they're a standard. You know, you're much more likely to see somebody wearing wireless earbuds than wired. Out and about.
Another example that I can think of is, I remember when MP3 players were first coming out. And that would have been about what, 2000, 2002, 3, 4, whatever, somewhere around, whatever it was. And like there were loads of different variations and all that kind of stuff, and they all did it. But then Apple came out then with their iPod, and then they just kind of like revolutionized it.
Well, I remember before I got I got a 5th generation iPod, which to my mind, and the 5th generation iPod and the 4th generation iPhone are the best devices Apple have ever produced, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I still use my iPod, sorry, because I have the right connector on my stereo, so it just sits in there. So it's, you know, I've got my CDs beside it, but I've got a second library of music in my iPod. Yeah. I think it's, you know, there was a book written about it called The Perfect Thing, and you know, for what it is, I mean, it is absolutely perfect. And there was a friend of mine, at the time, he was a very early adopter of MP3s. And he was like, look, my MP3 player will do this. It's got a radio in it. It's got that. It's got a... And I was like, oh, that's quite impressive. But here was my, you know, 500 meg-ish MP3 player. I only needed it to do one thing. And it did it exceedingly well. And it had a wonderfully novel click wheel. And that's all it took.
And you know what? I have heard that recently those iPods are very much in demand by Gen Z now. Okay.
Really?
For the very reason that they are suffering from information overload, and smartphones do too much, and the whole thing. And like just having those iPods with the click wheel, really simple, boom, off you go.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know?
I get it.
So, and do you know what I think is interesting as well, now, as you say, so thinking about John Ternus going into the CEO role as a hardware guy, okay? Actually, do you know what? This is going to be interesting, because Steve Jobs wasn't a hardware guy, okay? He was the visionary. He knew about the hardware and knew whatever could be done, and he would force people into make, but he didn't actually work on the hardware. But Steve brought in the iPod, all right? You know what? We were just thinking, like, why can't you walk around with 1,000 songs in your pocket? Woo! I mean, great statement, okay? When he did the iPhone, he said, well, can I put this? And, who needs a stylus? Why don't you just use your finger and combine it all in? Let me introduce it to the iPhone. Woo! And they were huge industry-changing products. The other one I loved was he said, these laptops and they're big and they're and all that kind of stuff, And then he says, let me introduce you to the iPad Air. He pulls it out of an A4 envelope.
Yeah.
That, I think John Ternus is capable of another moment like that. I don't think Tim Cook ever had a moment like that.
No, he didn't. Tim Cook was very good at letting other people show what they're good at. If you remember watching any of the recent Apple product reveals, Tim Cook would do the introduction and then he'd bounce it off to somebody like Craig Federini.
Yeah.
And then this person, and then he'd come back at the end. Great for sort of a sense of team building or, being part of a culture as opposed to a cult of personality. Under Steve Jobs. So I think we'll see, more of that culture first mindset, which I have no problem with whatsoever. The Apple mission will be unchanged because they're incredibly successful company. So why change anything? But we do have plenty more to talk about.
Oh my goodness. So we do. So listen, do we want to talk about Tim and kind of the overall where he was, or will we just get straight into Tim's top 10?
We've done 10 minutes of overview. Let's jump into the top 10.
Yeah, I think get into the top 10. So basically what we've done is we've kind of taken the good and the bad. And we've just done a rough list of number 10 down to number 1 about Tim's achievements and failures. At Apple. So let's kick off at number 10. Niall, you go first.
I'm mine are predominantly negative, and you will be positive. And yes. I'm going to start. And
I have to stress that's because you told me to be.
Yeah, I told you. I told you to be positive.
Go on anyway. Yeah, number 10.
So we're talking about product. You're not going to bat 1,000 on this. Every iteration of Apple has had its product flops. Steve Jobs had his bad days, and Tim Cook had a bad day as well with the 12-inch MacBook, 2015 to 2019. You might remember this one. It had an 11-inch screen. A 12-inch screen, I think it was. It was bigger than the MacBook Air, and it was distinguishable by it had a Retina display. It had only one port. It had one USB-C port.
Yeah,
and it was the introductory device of the butterfly keyboard.
Yeah.
All
right. Okay. Just that alone is a fail.
Well, yeah, that was it, and also, I think it led to the creation of the laughing Spanish man meme. If you know the one, it's people just put different subtitles on it, and it's the guy with very few teeth being interviewed and laughing horrifically. It was the first time I saw that meme, and he is discussing the absolute con job that is the MacBook. It was looking at how Apple has divided up its product line now. You can see that this stuck out like a sore thumb. You now go from, MacBook Air, or rather MacBook Neo, to MacBook Air to MacBook Pro. At the time, it was MacBook Air to MacBook Pro. Even just the nomenclature on it was just off. It was just a bit off. Ultimately, I think it was just that version. It was just that middle child problem. I don't see what problem it particularly solved. The introduction of the butterfly keyboard, tippity tappity, tippity tappity, audible from a distance. I think, that kind of did for it. When your selling points are, it's got a good screen. Okay, that's fine. Followed by, it's got one port. Followed by, and the keyboard is wretched. It's okay. Yeah. I'm out.
Listen, that's why I always say A is for Apple and A is for accessory. Because, well, it's very rare that you could buy an Apple product that doesn't need an accessory. Do you know, there's only one port on it. Oh, we have an accessory for that. Well, why didn't you build it in the first place? Sorry. Okay. I'm not being negative today. No. I'm being super positive about Apple. So let's go with number 9. Yeah. A success for Tim Cook. And it ended up being a success. It was his first major product launch, which was 2014. Which was 3 years after he took over as CEO. Now, I think we should remember that with John Ternus now this time around, because if he takes over today, it could be 3 years before he launches his own big. Oh, and one more thing. Anyway, the Apple Watch was Tim's first big launch. And I think at the time, it was nice and all the Apple fanboys loved it, but it didn't necessarily set the world on fire. However, I think what it's done is it's set the standard for all other watchmakers, and everybody has risen with the rising tide, if you like. And Apple Watch is now leading. I was going to say kind of the watch market, but actually, do you know what? It's as effective as a health device as it is for telling the time. And like, I mean, you go to a lot of people now these days, you go, how many steps do you walk a day? And people are able to tell you. Yeah. You know, and that's down to, I mean, that's a huge global popular shift, if you like. You know, and that was Tim who kind of brought that in. Other things like, you know, we had the iPad beforehand, so that was great. But, I mean, he really beefed it up with the iPad Pro. Which is a stunning piece of tech. The AirTags.
It's all down to messaging. We can circle back to the.
Did you just say circle
watch.
Back?
I know, I'm getting very corporate in my old age.
I got to circle back around the back of the building and beat you up for using language like that.
Well,
but anyway,
because
go on.
Apple changed the narrative around smartwatches, which, as you said rightly, had been around for a long time. And they changed the narrative for tablets, because we all know, like, I mean, we were all using tablets with, you know, external keyboards to do very lightweight tasks that people that you could do on a laptop, right? And, you know, Steve Jobs was this is a content consumption device. You're using it as a second screen. You're there on the sofa. You're watching stuff. This is how you use it. Under Tim Cook, that changed. And it was recognized that, people are using these as laptops. Let's, you know, retool this as a higher end product that professionals can use if they so wish. And that was, you know, that was great. That was responding to the customer base, you know, and saying, people are using them as productivity tools. However, to go back to the smartwatch, to go back to the Apple Watch, it was the first product I'd seen in a while where just from the crown alone, it'd maybe go, oh, okay, you've got my attention. And over time, it went from, this is a nice looking watch, to this is a device that solves a problem for you, which is a much easier sell. Because I think people had, you know, Fitbits and fitness trackers and all that kind of thing. Microsoft cycled through them. People have how many Fitbits in their you know, cupboards that were never used. Integrating all of that into the Apple Watch, I think, was a really good idea. I remember when that pivot kind of came about, and we were watching the product announcement and going, this is the point at which the Apple Watch has left us behind. It has found its feet. It's going off to do its own thing. And you know what? We're fine with it. And you know what? Apple is very happy with it, because it has been the makings of that product.
All right, that's number 9. What have you got at number 8 on your list?
Number 8. Okay, I have down. I'm calling it a fraught relationship with the EU.
Oh, fraught! You are being kind.
I am being very kind. As you know, between 1990 and 2014, Apple was using a tax arrangement called the Double Irish, which basically meant that it was paying very, very little corporation tax in Ireland. And it was certainly not paying any in Europe. I won't go into the ins and outs of of how this actually worked. But needless to say, you can't do it anymore. And the EU made a decision that said, okay, look, Apple, you've been getting away with this for, so many years. We've done the sums on it. You have actually avoided paying 13 billion in taxes to the Irish state. It's bad enough that Ireland has lower corporation tax than anyone else. You've managed to circumvent it. You owe Ireland 13 billion, to which our government, like any other sane government in the world, went, no, you take.
We don't want the money.
Go on. You take that. Say nothing. Just put it in your pocket there. Go buy yourself some sweets afterwards.
Don't spend it all in the one shop.
So, we really did not want that money. And it went through to the highest court in the EU that said, no, you owe the money. Yep, pay Ireland the money. You can well afford it. So it was held in escrow for a couple of years. The final decision came down last year. Yes, Apple has to pay the money. In interest and whatnot, it comes to 14.3 billion. I mean, come on. Apple can easily afford this. They got a very good deal for a long time. Interestingly enough, Tim Cook came out and said that the EU, not that the EU is picking on Apple, which is interesting. He said the EU is picking on Ireland, which was a very coded way of saying, we know it's fine. We're not pulling out of Ireland. We're not doing anything to you. It's those guys making you do stuff. Relax. I thought that was a very, very cunning piece of wordplay. Thought that was very clever. So that was part one. Part two comes down to the Digital Services Act, which is all about making sure that if you're developing an application, you should just be able to develop it once and that's it, right? Or if you want to, say, download an app from somewhere that isn't Google Play or isn't the Apple App Store, you should be able to do that as well.
Yeah.
Platforms should not be closed boxes. They should be open. If you want to innovate using them, brilliant, go for it. This is kind of... this is the idea with the Digital Services Act. Of course, that is completely antithetical to what Apple believe. Apple are very much in the, hey, come do it the Apple way. It'll be safe. It's secure because we're vetting it. We're in charge. If anything goes wrong, it's on us. So as a result, they have been at odds over the Digital Services Act, and it has led to the delay in rolling out, in particular, Apple Intelligence. Which is something we'll talk about later. So I'm calling it a fraught relationship with the EU.
That's putting it mildly. Okay, that's number 8. Number 7. I think one of the good things, in some ways, that Apple has done under Tim Cook is that it has become more of a service company as well as being a hardware company. So kind of good things that he's brought in is, we had Apple TV for a long time, but then Tim brought in Apple TV Plus, which instead of just making it a gimmick, it was kind of like, all right, well, now this is proper 4K television, big screen, whatever it is that you want. And not only that, and this is where I'm getting into the service side of things, is that you were able to pay a subscription, a monthly subscription, and you would get brand new original Apple generated content. And I think this is good and I think this is bad because it meant that Apple then kind of got into the business of creating TV box sets and creating movies.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people like it. They've had some successes. I would think most of them actually were a bit... There's something about Apple TV movies. I don't know, or Apple movies. They're just... I just find them dull. I don't know if you found that. However, the concept, he's put it out there and they have become one of the leading streaming companies in the world. They're up there with Disney. They're up there with Netflix. They're up there with all of these.
I think, they've had a particularly good, they've had 2 breakout hits in Pluribus and Severance. Those 2 seem to have broken through.
I would have said Morning Show as well.
Yeah, you quite like that, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I'm a media...
Oh, and Ted Lasso as well. That did very well for them.
Yeah.
But for me, they all have that same kind of corporate sheen to them. You know, they're just in the background, there's something just saying to me, this isn't TV, this is Apple TV kind of a thing. It's not like HBO where it's more creator led, or at least was more creator led. I mean, if Apple TV was HBO, I mean, would Oz feel the same way as The Sopranos, feel the same way as Curb Your Enthusiasm? Not really. I don't find Apple TV to be as eclectic.
All right. Okay. Other stuff that he's brought in as services is iCloud, of course, which they sell a lot on the privacy side of things. I think it's interesting that he took iTunes from being where you purchase music into Apple Music, where you can just stream it and you can have it's their own version of. It's their own version of Spotify, but you kind of have the two big music streamers in the world now are Spotify and Apple Music.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's a good thing he's done for the company. And then CarPlay, I think having that available in cars and stuff like that, but then so is Apple Android or Apple Android. Oh my goodness. Shoot me now. The Android version for the car. All of those things, making it into a service company. Now, you told me to be positive, but I can't think of a positive thing about all of these things, because basically it's just Apple who are off selling you a service which they then charge you for every single month at Apple pricing, of course, which I think is extortionate. And then everything is played within the walled garden. So if you really kind of want to make the most of it, you've got to be an Apple subscriber. Works brilliantly with Apple hardware and all that kind of stuff if you want to be in there, but you're getting creamed.
Well, that's the deal you make.
I'm sorry, Niall. I was trying to be positive and then it all went horribly wrong. There you go. That's number 7. Number 6 for Niall. What have you got?
Apple Intelligence.
Or lack of.
I'm not going to delve too deeply into it. But needless to say, it has been underwhelming. It was meant to launch. It launched in the States in October 2024. Arrived here in April, I think, 2025. Again, had trouble in Europe over having the platform open so other people can develop things for Apple Intelligence. And of course, it was to be the backbone of a reinvigorated Siri, turning Siri from, just something you could speak to and make notes to something that can actually, be a bit more proactive in getting back to you with things, a bit more chatbotty. One of the big problems that they also faced was just ChatGPT was not delivering the kind of user experience they wanted. So they ditched ChatGPT this year in favor of Gemini. So that was also a big problem / just decision that had to be made. I think Apple, because their version of AI was a different AI, it just feels like they're behind the curve on this. I think it's not a product failure. But they have been slow out the gate with it. Will it come right? Well, it'll probably come right, but by the time they've caught up, the features that they have will either be, novel or nice to haves. But I think all the things that people will be using it for, the core functions, have already been covered elsewhere.
Do you know what? When I think of Apple AI and intelligence and where they're going to go next and the next big thing, you're going to laugh at this, all right?
Okay.
But I think of the movie and the book I, Robot.
You always think of it. Have you read any other books?
I'm in the middle of reading Andy Weir's book now, Artemis, funny enough.
Oh, really?
And it's quite good. Yeah, it's quite good. But what I mean is, I can see Apple showing up with a fully polished robot that is intelligent and it can communicate. I mean, we can't do it with smart speakers yet. We're still not able to do it with smart speakers and have an intelligent conversation with it. And it always gets wrong. It's like kind of you ask any of those smart speakers to play your favorite band and usually it plays something else. But I think we will get there, and I think Apple may have the finesse to be able to do it so that you have a robot that's kind of going around the house. Did you see any of the videos this week of the robot race in China? I think it was in kind of Beijing or somewhere like that.
I saw one where a robot tripped over and started.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. And loads of it, everybody's online going, why are we having a half marathon with robots? That's stupid. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. I don't think that it's stupid at all. I think the whole thing about having a race, and I think it was all development teams from the same company. Maybe it's very specific, but anyway, it gives people a focus in order to develop and see how it is that they can improve and make a valid working thing. And to have this humanoid robot running for 12 miles unassisted, like that's a hell of an achievement. Do you know what I mean? It's got to stay standard. It's got to go fast. And they're not allowed to use wheels, which would be the most sensible thing to use. It actually has to have legs. It has to figure out where it is, where it's going, all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, it reminds me of when the Americans, went to the moon in the 60s. Look at the amount of stuff that came from that seeped into the world. Everything from computing to, you know, the material that covers your frying pan. You know, all of that came from that progress. So anyway, that's the robot race. And I apologize. Back to Apple Intelligence. Yeah, maybe a negative. I think that could turn around to be a positive one day for Apple, but just not yet. That was number what? That was number 6.
Yeah.
You're up next. Into the top 5. Dusty trying to be positive, and I will be positive about this. Actually, it was Tim Cook and operations, and turning Apple into a really well-honed operating machine, because that was his background was operations. And before he took over as CEO, he was their COO, Chief Operations Officer, and really got into, like when Tim arrived, Apple weren't making anything in China. All right. Tim got his hands on it and they started making a lot of stuff in China. All right. And he really went for it in a big way, to the extent now with iPhones, you've got practical cities that are making stuff for Apple. And they're just very, very good at being able to do kind of just-in-time stuff where they're able to ramp up production of stuff when they're at launch, and then kind of ramp it back down and then ramp it back up, so that they're doing that kind of just-in-time delivery, just carrying enough stock to satisfy what the market wants at the time. Tim was a master at the operations and just making it zing along. Also cutting back on costs with automation in the factories, using robotics. I mean, bringing robots up again. So a lot of what he put in place in the early noughties as a COO, he kind of just really put the lid on it and finessed it and whatever as CEO. So I say bravo, operations, well done.
Well, I mean, Apple's operations has been very controversial because for years it was wrapped up with Foxconn in China, where working conditions were, to say the least, controversial. There was a spate of people actually killing themselves in Foxconn factories. Very difficult company to be involved with. Now, in recent years, specifically with the advent of Trump 1 and Trump 2, Apple diversified. So it's no longer relying exclusively on China. It manufactures also in Vietnam, India, and even brought some, I think the Mac Studio was made in the States. So, they have diversified an awful lot. So, especially given China's sort of, or rather Trump's enmity towards China, it kind of makes sense not to rely on one country for all your manufacturing. And I think that sort of that inventory management and that making sure everybody gets what they want and pre-orders means, you'll actually you won't have Cybertruck level disappointment where you order something and expect it in 18 months and it doesn't show up. No, I think Apple product announcements have gotten really good at, here it is, you can pre-order it next week and you'll get it. And it's that level of reliability that you alluded to there. I think that is very impressive.
Okay, number 4. I'm not too sure if I agree with this one as a failure, but go on, go for it.
Yeah. Spatial computing, because it's not enough for Apple to say mixed reality. We have been through the ringer on all things AR, VR, MR over the last decade or so. Ever since kind of the arrival of the first generation Oculus by HTC, who owned it at the time. My first few experiences of it were very convincing. I could see the applications of it. I could see the applications of augmented reality. Microsoft had a particularly good device in the HoloLens that ultimately I could see, actually, manufacturing and surgery, like there's a lot of good stuff could go on here. Unfortunately, and Google Glass, of course, sort of the first kind of mass market augmented reality device. And we know how that ended. It's almost the trend had passed by the time Apple got to market with the Vision Pro. Oculus, you can pretty much draw a line under it now after Facebook killed the metaverse. Microsoft killed the HoloLens. Google Glass never got out the gates properly because of privacy concerns. The companies left in the space, I mean, Oculus is still there, doing other stuff. Razer is still there. Sony is hanging on. They are all doing well in gaming. That's where their lives are. And, not going anywhere in that, but it is gone back to being a niche product. Apple arrived with the Vision Pro at $3,500. The intention being, here developers, have at it, go make us some apps. The same way that the iPad and iPhone took off, people found the right apps to put on them and it made sense. And Apple's whole thing was, look, this isn't just about gaming. This is about, your virtual desktop, your virtual environment as a desktop. And this will be your productivity space. Fine in theory, but ultimately the applications in real terms, as well as sort of ideological terms, just weren't there. I don't know anyone who owns a Vision Pro. I think I might have seen one in the wild. And some of the features were very uncanny valley. I mean, the whole thing of, somebody turning to you and, their eyes appearing in the lens. I could see what they were doing. I could see what they were going for. But the more you saw it and the more you thought about it, and the more you saw that they were just going with a blue bar a la Knight Rider or something like that, for the time being, it just didn't take off. Now, officially, Apple has not given up on the Vision Pro. However, its manufacturing of it is finished. Whether we're going to see a new generation, I think, is going to be tied into Apple's gaming plans. I am not going to hold my breath on either the Vision Pro or spatial computing as a concept.
Let's get into the big 3. Now, I have to say, all right, because I never really give Apple credit or never really have too much good things to say about them. My number 3, and when we get to number 1, I stand behind 100%. All right. And at number 3, under Tim Cook, was the introduction of Apple Silicon.
Can't argue.
The whole M series processors was just brilliant. And I think, and this is kind of where the thing I hate about Apple was the walled garden, but oh my God, does it work? Do you know what I mean? You're building the CPU around the software, and the two of them are working absolutely flawlessly. And because of that, the speed that you're getting and the efficiency that you're getting out of those M series processors is just stunning. And the price that they're doing it for as well in certain circumstances is just amazing. So I have to say for Tim, who's not a hardware guy, to bring out Apple Silicon on his watch and to, kind of move away from that whole reliance on Intel, that is a massive achievement for the company. Massive.
Yeah. I mean, Apple bringing their chips in. I mean, they worked with IBM and then they worked with Intel. And now they're doing their own stuff, and their own stuff is clearly, as you would imagine, it's technically superior. I think it has been a massive step forward. It was one of these things that as soon as we saw I think even the M1 in action, we were like, that's it. Intel are done. Nobody's going to be asking for their Intel, for Intel to sign a new deal. It's a new day immediately. It's almost like the Nirvana effect, It's like as soon as you saw Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time or heard it for the first time, you're like, nope, that's it. Everything has changed, and for me, it's that way with the M series.
That's at number 3. Number 2, then, and this is a biggie, and it's not necessarily to do with an achievement from Tim, hardware or operations wise. It's to do with his behavior.
Well, no, I when I wrote this, I was in. Sort of, I was raging a little bit because this is what he's going to be remembered for in popular culture, certainly in politics. It is his relationship with the Trump administration, the Trump regime, if you want to look at it that way,
or some of the crazy things he's done with the Donald. Now, on one level, I get it. In the same way that he stood up for Ireland to the EU, at least on paper, he's taking one for the team on this. He is basically making sure that Apple does not suffer for the next X number of years while Trump was in office. He got Apple through Trump 1. Trump 2, he does have the stink of the administration on him. And I think he probably feels a little bit trapped by it. So here we go. Here's a few things that happened that are Trump related under Tim Cook's watch. First of all, Apple donated $1 million to the Trump inauguration effort. Yeah. Yippity doo dah.
Well, hey, I mean, $1 million
for you
is a
and
lot
me,
of
that's
money
like
to you and me.
Here's €1.
to them, they're playing a different game, but. There was also his appearance at the Trump inauguration itself. Now, what I found particularly disrespectful is that the image we all take away from that day is Zuckerberg, Bezos, Pichai, and Musk standing together in front of the cabinet, and actually just behind the cabinet, out of shot in most of the pictures that I've seen, was Tim Cook. The guy fronts a company worth more than any of the other oligarchs represented, and they didn't even put him in the front row, right? Why didn't they put him in the front row? I have my theories. I won't burden you with them.
Or it could be said, did Tim take a step back and didn't want to be in the front row?
Well, I mean, we can always speculate on that front. So then, I think only a couple of months ago, he visited the White House and presented Trump with a plaque. Yeah. Glass and gold plaque for reasons. Yeah. And the Apple Peace Prize, whatever you want to.
It doesn't matter. That to me is one of the low. You're right at number 2 as a negative. That was a low point, a really, really bad low. Hello, Mr. President, who is of dubious character. Here's a 24 karat gold.
Here's a bauble for you. Put this on your shelf. Go for it.
It's like it takes kissing ass to a whole new level.
Now, interesting that you use that exact term, because that is exactly what Trump said Tim Cook did to and for him.
Well, it is. Yeah.
I got a little bit of an exchange here. This is Trump talking to someone about his first term and discussing his relationship with Tim Apple.
Yeah.
He said, "For me, it began with a phone call from Tim at the beginning of my first term. He had a fairly large problem that only I, as president, could fix." This was a post he put on Truth Social. "When I got the call, I said, wow, it's Tim Apple, brackets, Cook, exclamation point, because that's how he rolls. Calling. How big is that? I was very impressed with myself to have the head of Apple calling to kiss my ass." There you go. That's got to sting.
And it went downhill from there. It went downhill from there. All right, yeah, that is that's an unfortunate thing, I think, that he will be remembered for. However, let's get to the positive, and the biggest positive of them all. At number 1 on our list of 10 things that Tim Apple, Cook, in brackets, exclamation mark, will be remembered for. The money. Investors love it. The company love it. Me as a punter hates it. When he came in 2011, Apple was worth $350 billion. And you would think to yourself, oh my God. I remember then, what was it, 5-6 years later, 2018 anyway was the year, that Apple became the world's first $1 trillion company. All right. Now, 2018 was what, 6, 7, 8 years ago? In that 8 years, Apple has quadrupled its value and is now a $4 trillion company. Just the money that goes in there is insane.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm applauding this, because, I mean, brilliant, fantastic. But the reason it is because they completely overcharge and fleece their customer base. Me.
It's premium, Dusty.
There's premium, and then there's just ripping people off, and they are absolutely ripping people off. You know, I am not denying for a second that it is a premium product. I'm not denying for a second that it is extremely well made, which all Apple products are, like extremely well made, but they are not worth the price level that they price at. I hate the fact that every accessory you want to buy with Apple is 30 quid and up. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the services then that they use, I think then are expensive as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's all about the margin, isn't it?
But the margin is amazing with Apple.
Yeah.
But it has to be said, for a CEO of a corporation to bring the company from the value of 350 billion up to 4 trillion. I mean, what's that? That's 1, 2, 3, and then that's 12 times the value in 15 years.
It's an incredibly impressive feat. It's incredibly impressive. Yeah. And you're right to put it at number 1.
Yeah. And I think that's where I'm looking forward to a change with Apple, because I think with Tim, it was all about the money, the operations, you know, making it as efficient as possible, charging as much as possible, working our money so that we're just, I mean, they are literally swimming in money. And that's all. It's kind of like, all right, okay. It seems to me like the most important thing to Apple is money. Does that make sense? I'm gonna challenge that slightly, right? Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a business, yeah, okay, I get it. As a product company, I don't think they have ever stopped putting the user at the center of their product design. And a big chunk of that goes back to Johnny Ive, who had this thing, I think it was Housewives in Des Moines. It's like if a housewife in Des Moines can use your product, it's a good product, right?
Yeah.
And I think Apple has stayed true to that user-friendly ethos at a time when all its competitors are pivoting towards corporate users and services. Apple's hardware business is what sets them apart and their consumer focus. So I think it is an incredible achievement for a consumer-facing company to be as wildly successful as it is. It's been a criticism of Google. It's a criticism of Microsoft. Their products are getting worse because they're pivoting towards businesses. They don't have to rely on, annoyed user feedback. They're just not dealing with that space. Apple have dealt with annoyed user feedback, and it goes into the ideas pile, and they do rectify things. So sometimes they are stubborn in that you'll come around to this eventually, like with the MacBook Air, and sometimes they try and shoehorn things in there, and it doesn't work out, like with the Vision Pro maybe.
Yeah. But anyway, bravo to Tim Cook. I think that he has... Actually, do you know what? In some ways, Steve Jobs was brilliant in his way. And I think Tim Cook was brilliant in his way, in a really more conservative, business level kind of a way. I'm hoping that our new guy who is taking over is going to be kind of maybe a mix of both. Do you know what I mean? Because John Ternus has the hardware background and the design, but as CEO, he must have business acumen as well. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of both, and we'll start seeing something new and fun and innovative and whatever. And it might take 2 years for him to do it, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. There we go. That is our top 10. Tim's top 10. I'm getting lost in alliteration here. Tim's top 10 at Apple. Niall, thank you as always.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That is about it for our show this week. There are loads and loads and loads and loads of other stories that we didn't cover this week, but they are online. What kind of stuff have we got on there? No.
Sure. We have the Learnovate Centre going on the road. Elon Musk is a no-show in Paris as an investigation into X continues. And Deezer reveals how it's handling a deluge of AI-created content.
All of those stories and more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again with a regular show for you next Friday. In the meantime, please do share our podcast with a friend. If they're into tech and gadgets and what's going on in Ireland and across the world, just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland wherever they get their podcasts. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, thank you for listening and have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.